Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, brother. How are you?
Living the dream, Tim. Living the dream. You?
How's the weather out there? It's a little snowy down this way.
Uh, not bad. It's cold. It's cold, but like we didn't get the Buffalo snow. We didn't get that. The
Oh, I'm sorry.
Buffalo Bills game moving snow that we're gonna talk about a little bit.
Paid off though.
Yeah, no, it ended up working out for the Bills. So it's fine.
And that's all I really care about.
Yeah, that's right. That's the important thing here. It's safety. But no, Rochester's is like 2 inches of snow on the ground. That's it. Not much. It's like not much snow here. I assume global warming is to blame. Is
look,
what I assume.
we've long been promised global warming in upstate New York, and frankly, I'm a little disappointed. It's just not arriving the way I'd like it.
Well, the way it's working out for Rochester is Buffalo stealing all of our snow. That's how it's shaken out so far.
All right, that works. Buffalo's always historically been a snow-ridden city.
Yeah. No, yeah. Well, like it's always like Buffalo, Syracuse, and Rochester, like the snowiest cities in the United States.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like legitimately, like we get like more inches of snow. It doesn't always stick, but we get like more snow than like any other city in the U.S.
All right.
Which is why, like, we'll get a foot of snow in this county and like in the afternoon, and then the next day everyone's still going to work.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so like the plows are going to be doing, double shifts. All right. So everyone just deals with it. Main roads get plowed. Most people just go right to work.
All right.
Just the weird stuff like the blizzard in Buffalo last year that really throws people off. But anyway, we're not going to just talk about the weather on this, although that is part of the one of our first topics.
It is because we get to A, celebrate a Bills victory, and B, I don't know about you, but I'm making fun of Kathy Hochul.
Like, all right, we're gonna do a bit of that. We'll talk about an international issue. Usually we're talking about like state issues, local issues lately, but we're gonna talk about an international issue, and then we'll talk about a national issue. We'll talk about the international issues, the war, potential war in Yemen. We'll talk about that. What's going on there? In the Red Sea and all the Houthis and whatnot, and then we'll talk about national issues. We'll talk about the Iowa caucuses. Your man Vivek dropping out already.
He dropped out. Well, we'll save it for the show, but he dropped out, and I don't know, like angling for a cabinet position, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, we're gonna get to all that stuff and more. And of course, if you have things to share with us, you let us know in the comments.
Yeah, our boots on the ground has something I'll throw in at some point. Our friend Patty.
So and Shelly out there too. Out there shoveling snow.
Nice. And collecting news stories for us to talk about. I got a couple. She sent me in the messenger.
So, very cool. All right, so we're gonna head in about 10 seconds, and 5, 4, 3.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, brother. It's freezing all over New York State right now. And I just want to tell everybody that I am sadly disappointed at the level of global warming that has been promised me and what has been delivered. I feel as though they overpromised, and once again, under delivered once again.
Despite the promises, upstate New York January is still here.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
I mean, it wasn't fairly warm December. Like I have nothing to complain about weather-wise.
It rained a lot.
As it started getting cold, I'm just like, it is mid-January. It's I chose to live here. I expect this, and I haven't had to shovel all that much. I've even had to use my little teeny electric snowblower. Haven't had to use that yet.
I've got one of those. It's kind of awesome. Other than when you catch that cord in it just right, it gets a little bit hairy, and then
Sort of
sometimes
exciting.
where you plug it in, like you get a little like sparkage from the water getting collected in there. But other than that, it's awesome.
I have not had that particular issue. But mine's also only a couple years old, so it might get there.
The Freedom variant likes his old junk, man. Honestly, I don't know how old this thing is. I have no idea. It was a gift. Like a customer's like, "Hey, I'm going to throw that away. Do you want it?" And I'm like, "I don't see why not." Like
why not, man? Just make good use out of it. I bought mine a couple years ago. It's all plastic too, and I don't know. Like the gas ones, like I don't need a gas one for like I have a tiny driveway and I live in the city. If like having a gas one when like I live with my parents, they have a big driveway that you need to throw heavy snow like 15 feet.
Yeah,
I want that. The electric one though, that's fine.
It works for you.
Yeah. But
my electric lawnmower is freaking killer, man. I have like a tiny patch of grass by the side of my house, and my electric lawnmower literally kills it. It's just so nice. The lawn looks so good. It's quiet and it's light and look, it's if I need, I have a riding lawnmower for my shop. I have 2 riding lawnmowers for my shop, so it's like I got both ends covered.
Yeah. No. Hey, that's what works. All right. We weren't going to talk about our equipment here on the show, though. We were going to talk about some actual like news. We were going to talk about snow a little bit, though. Segueing into that is, like there's of course there was a Bills game this weekend. Well, it's supposed to be this weekend. It's supposed to be Sunday. Got moved to Monday at 4:30. If you listen to this on WYSL on Thursday, it's of course, that was a couple days ago, but the Bills' victory still fresh here when we're recording live on Tuesday. Kind of nice, moving on to the division round. But there's a bunch of folks who are like, the only reason it was moved was because Kathy Hochul was abusing her power. They're criticizing her. She made like the first announcement about it, that they were postponing the game. All sorts of accusations. Like again. I mean, in addition to the Bills are soft for moving the game stuff, right? Like we talk about like politics and policy on this show, but like Governor Hochul, was part of the announcement to do that. Tim, appropriate, both the decision itself and Kathy Hochul being the face of it.
Well, so therein lies my conundrum, because the decision in and of itself is fine. It's okay to postpone a game because you got 60 or 70,000 people driving to a location they're going to get snowed in during the game. That part's fine. What I cannot stand, what I literally, Kevin, drives me nuts, is Kathy Hochul taking the opportunity to virtue signal all over social media, all over the news, pretending like she is the absolute savior of like protector in chief, this authoritarian like benevolence that I don't know, man. It drives me crazy. She drives me nuts. That was
well, right. So I think we're kind of on the same page about like most of this, right? So the decision itself, I know a bunch of people like, oh, Kathy Hochul and the Erie County executive, they're abusing their power. You should never have like prohibitions on driving. There should never be a travel ban. That's authoritarianism.
It is.
Yeah, it's not great, but also like it's probably a bad idea to drive, right?
Sure.
Like the roads are not great. And again, I get why like the county, the state, and the NFL like maybe we should move this game to Monday when things are going to be less bad. Because Buffalo did just have a blizzard like a year ago where like several dozen people died in the blizzard. And part of the reason why a lot of people died was like, well, they're out and people got stuck in the road, and then suddenly more people got stuck behind them, and now no plows can get through, and you have everything's jammed up. And that's when you saw the things like a week later of like front loaders like scooping cars out of city streets and stuff, right?
Sure.
And then you don't want people to die, right? Like that's a legitimate thing that can happen in a blizzard / lake effect snowstorm. And with 70,000 people going to one single spot, all it takes is a handful of cars to get stuck in the middle of a major road, and now everyone's stuck. Right. And EMS can't get in, fire departments can't get no emergency services are going to be able to get in and do much about that. It's hard enough getting around that area when the weather is nice. But to your point about our governor, is she does always like to kind of ride the coattails of everything else going on. Like we talked about this with the kidnapping thing recently in the state police. We talked about Kathy Hochul does this type of stuff all the time where she'll just like insert herself in the news events, particularly in situations. I mean, maybe she is from the area. She is from like the Buffalo area. So I'm sure she's legitimately a Bills fan, but she's always like jumping in and inserting herself in these things and taking credit and gathering visibility off of the popularity of others. And she did this another time too with I think it was like I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was like a Spectrum, like ESPN, like kerfuffle that was preventing some people from being able to watch the Bills game. And she like made a weird Instagram it was just the most cringy thing. I'll see if I can find a link to it. Most cringy thing where she was like pretending to make the call and save the day and stuff. It was bizarre.
She's the queen of cringe. Like the look, the vaccine necklace, the vaccine apostles that she asked for, those things. Well, I mean, look, she had a good mentor. Cuomo was kind of the same way. They're these embarrassing clowns. Like Cuomo, I can remember Cuomo being out in a windbreaker, like talking to a trucker, being like, "Hey, we're gonna close down this road from," like making him the story when it's like they're just closing the throughway, man. Like you putting your face in front of it makes it look silly. And I think that honestly, people were in fact upset about the Bills changing the day of the game. But I think if Kathy Hochul hadn't have said anything about it, they would have been way less upset about it. They'd have just been like, yeah, whatever.
But yeah, there's part of that. There's some folks who are like, it felt like they're mad just because like Hochul was part of it, which she could have just like her office, like some office could have sent out like a thing saying like, hey, because like you could say like the governor, because they oversee some stuff that exists across counties. People would be traveling across counties, would make a recommendation to like, shut down the throughway, and like recommend against travel, right? In coordination with local county executives, and the NFL, right? So she did that, but she had to do like again the whole like press conference. She made it a thing.
Look, Kevin, she tweeted out a video of Orchard Park in the stadium being a little bit socked in from some blowing snow. Like, look, this is not what I want from politicians. It's like a decision was made. Stop acting the fool and stop virtue signaling. Like, let's just move on. You know what I mean? That's what I want. It's like,
yeah. It was like a big thing over the weekend, and I know like, but even by the time like this airs on Thursday on WYSL, it's going to be I've died out mostly, but it became a big thing, and for the folks who are like, no, they shouldn't have canceled it at all, and they only canceled it because Governor Hochul canceled it. I don't think they canceled it just because of her. I think the Bills, like they sort of want to play Sunday, but also like their staff might not have been able to get in, their players might not have been able to get in. It's like,
and look, they played the Bengals in the snow last year, and that didn't really pay off. Let's be fair, you know what I mean?
There's been some games like there's the famous like kind of Colts Bills game. Was it like 2017 where they're like shuffling around in like 8 inches of snow? Is hilarious to watch.
Which is kind of the adventure of football. You should be able to play football in any weather, but again, let's be real, right? Like, as much as I hate the government, them shutting down roads in a storm and telling people to stay home, that's not their worst function, right? Like that's
No,
not the worst thing that they do. Distorting the housing market is way worse than that. Like
no,
way, way,
no. There's
way,
a bunch of
way
stuff.
worse.
But and I know Shelley's saying freedom movement, travel ban, one of these things, not like the other. Again, I don't particularly like the idea of travel bans.
Sure.
I get why a county government is gonna say like, hey, please don't be on the roads at this time, because if you get stuck and you prevent, our police department, our fire department, our ambulances from getting through, you could, cause someone to die from that, right? Like, so don't be the one who's gonna go cause a problem or put yourself in danger because of that, right? But then
Yeah,
how do you handle that? Like, what's the best way to handle that? If you're not it's not merely about causing a problem for yourself, it's about causing problems for others. And
yeah,
that's really like the purpose of a travel ban, is to just say like, we're telling you this because then if you go and like, not that they're going out and like capturing people who are on the road, it's more about like, if you cause a problem, we now have like a recourse to like point at something to say, see, we told you not to do this and you did it anyway, and now someone got hurt because of it.
sure. And look, when it comes to travel advisories and roads being closed, there's been plenty of times when roads have been closed and I had a job to do and I went and did the
Right.
job, right?
I mean,
Like,
there's some people getting
yeah,
the first responders I talked about, like, if you got to get to work, you got to get to work, right? Like,
mhm.
you got to figure out the way, like, medical staff, like first responders, some people just got to go in.
A
It's
guy
what
that's
it
gonna
is.
shovel roofs or sidewalks, like you gotta do it.
Yeah,
And
the
I
guys in the truck
never,
recline
ever
driveways, all that.
yeah,
Yeah,
I never got in trouble for it. You know what I mean? I
no.
was glad that there wasn't 1,000 people also puttering around at 20 miles an hour in a snowstorm when I
And
really
most
had
people are smart enough not to do it, but
yeah, yeah, so, and look, again, had she not, made such a scene about her being such an integral part of the decision, I think that everyone would have just been like, well, not everyone. Like, there is an excitement to playing football in all sorts of weather. I get it, but still,
but it's football weather. Buffalo's soft. It's
yeah,
it's
sure,
fine. Like you would have been able to see anything during that game. Been hilarious.
mm,
I saw some like the camera views. It's just like white out.
yeah, that would have been fun. I mean, it would have been fun to watch for sure, but it
Yeah.
would have affected, like, it would have affected the overall enjoyment. It would have affected the overall number of people that would have attended. I- So, like, look, like, if Kathy Hochul again, I was wondering if Kathy Hochul had just kept her mouth shut, it would have been so much better. Be like, the roads are going to be closed, and we don't want a bunch of people stranded. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, no, that's part of it. And
Bigger news though, Kevin, about that, right?
oh, go ahead. But what bigger news?
Well, the Bills won.
The Bills won. They
The
did.
Bills
They
won.
did win. It's
They did win.
it was a fun game to watch. Won't dwell on that because we're not a sports show, but go Bills.
Right.
Hopefully they beat the Chiefs this weekend. We'll jump to our next topic now. We'll go over to the international side, zoom way out, go over to the international side. I think we'll probably talk about this segment and the next segment a little bit too, because it's a bunch of people were saying like, hey, look, we're starting to enter a global conflict. This is like the Israel Gaza, the Israel Palestine conflict, like stretching out into more of a global scenario, right? Because what's happening right now is in the Red Sea, where major shipping routes between Asia and Europe exist because they go up through the Red Sea, up through Egypt, and into the Mediterranean Sea, right? Saves ships a whole bunch of time because they don't have to go around Africa up to Europe.
Yep.
Significantly more expensive to do it that way. But what's happening is that there's this group called the Houthis, who are part of a civil war in Yemen. So it's not like we're attacking Yemen exactly. It's a group that is in Yemen. They control a good chunk of that country. It's civil war. The Saudis are involved. The Iranians are involved. It is a whole thing. And it's been going on for a while. But this Houthi group, they started attacking civilian merchant ships. So like people just again sending goods from Asia to Europe and vice versa, and started hijacking them, attacking them, holding people hostage, all sorts of stuff. And then also because their U.S. carrier groups down there, they started attacking or attempting to attack American ships, and so they kept launching missiles at the U.S. Navy, and the U.S. Navy several times like, hey, please stop that. Please stop that. Please stop. Like, I mean, it was a lot of times. Like they attacked a bunch of times. Like, yep, they launched 47 rockets at us today, and we deflected them all. If they don't stop this soon, we're definitely gonna do something about it. Yep, we're totally gonna do something about this soon. And the U.S. military finally did. They said, okay, we gave you a bunch of warnings. We did a press conference. We got a whole bunch of countries together and said, if you don't stop this, there's going to be consequences for it. And so they went on a few bombing runs, and they said, okay, we're going to try to reduce their capacity to carry out these sort of attacks by attacking, Houthi bases, radar sites, missile launch sites, production facilities, things like that. And so now, again, the reason why I brought it, I talked about like the Israeli-Palestine conflict was that the Houthis are saying, well, we're only doing this because we're trying to stop the genocide in Gaza. Right. They're saying that's the only reason we're doing this. And U.S. military supporting that. So we're attacking these ships. Okay. So these Houthi folks who are supported by Iran are attacking U.S. ships and, shipping ships up there. And it started to broaden out into a wider conflict. Again, now the U.S. military has gotten involved in some way. They've done something, right? And so now a bunch of people are saying, well, is this how we spin into World War III? So, Tim, I've laid all the groundwork. I've given all the context here. What do you think? We got a couple minutes left in this segment.
Yeah, so sure. Look, I want to be honest, Kevin. On some level, it's hard for me to argue that we're not already in some sort of World War kind of scenario, right? We have major conflicts going on all over the place. I don't like war, but when we're interfering, when I guess Islamofascists, like Islamo, like
yeah. No, I'm gonna give some more context on that afterwards. The Houthis are not great folks.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to discuss what's going on, but not to just minimize them as people, but to point out that the religious theocracy that they're working under is allowing them to commit atrocities. Now, that doesn't necessarily give us the right to just attack them, which at this point we weren't, but we have in the past. There's some
right.
You know what I mean?
That's the other context is like until like actually Joe Biden, for all the criticism we rightfully and that guy kind of scaled back the bombing campaigns of Yemen, which the Obama and the Trump administrations were very active in the U.S. military carrying out attacks in Yemen and supporting the Saudis who would pick the side in that war as well.
Correct. Like it was like Obama even admitted, right? Like he was kind of the guy like, well, the Saudis wanted us to do that. So like, we're doing it. You know what I mean?
And then the Iranians, again, they back the Houthis, and then the internationally recognized government of Yemen, which is supported by the Saudis, like that. That's the whole civil war thing. But we're gonna get into that a little bit more in just a few minutes. Gotta head to break here on a free solution. We back here on WYSL in just a few. Talk to you soon. All right.
Yeah. Certainly there is justifiable violence. Like I'm not.
No. Well, I want to jump back into the show a little bit, and I'm only gonna say this here because I can't say it during the show, and sorry, I'm gonna say a swear word, but like, there's a little bit of like, I see what happened with the Houthis, and I'm a little bit like, they kind of fucked around and found out. Like again, I'm very against war. We're both against war, but also if you launch a whole bunch of stuff at the U.S. Navy, eventually they're going to remove your capacity to launch stuff at the U.S. Navy. Like,
Look, and look, like keeping trade lanes and trade routes open
Yeah.
is one of the things that honestly adds value to the United States of America, that allows for it to be the our currency to be used throughout the world. And it's like we all benefit from that on some level, and it's not necessarily a form of oppression, it's a form of freedom, where if we're supporting trade routes and keeping them as free and as cheap as possible, like there's way worse things we could do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like one of those things.
Yeah. So I want to dive too deep into the discussion. We got a couple good comments here too. You know, it's we have to. Yeah, I want to get to this stuff. I want to read your comments, and then I want to discuss a couple of those things. Like, is there value in the U.S. like defending trade routes? What's the additional context on this? More context on this situation, and then like the weird political reactions we've gotten from this, right? Like, because there's some bizarre stuff out there. All right, let's go back in 5 seconds. Bob. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm still here, man, and we're on one of those my favorite kind of subjects where we're going to be talking about like a somewhat of a libertarian isolationist conundrum, right? Where we're saying, hey, it does in fact look like the U.S. Navy doesn't completely suck.
Yeah, and I want to read a couple of these comments here. This Facebook user says Suez Canal shipping is, I assume, down drastically. Supply chains being affected. Prices will be going up again, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the things the U.S. does is they use the power of our Navy to protect free trade, or protect trade between nations. We think this is a geopolitical good. So for better or worse, the United States spends a boatload of resources doing this. And then what's happening in this specific thing is, like all the shipping, billions and billions of dollars shipping that would go through this, up the Red Sea, up through the Suez Canal. Like, remember when like that ship got stuck in the Suez Canal and it was like a big thing for a little while. And then like it was enough where like that was only a little bit and prices went up. Well, now again, all these folks are going around Africa. The prices is way more expensive to do that. Prices are going up for stuff shipped from Asia to Europe because their prices are going up. Eventually, that'll lead to global consequences as well.
Yeah, can I just add a little color there? It's 7,000 more miles to ship if you have to go around.
No, you're right. Let's get more specific about that. 7,000 more miles. It's a lot more.
7,000 more miles to skip using the Suez Canal. That is astronomical, right? Even on a boatload of cheap Chinese goods or whatever it is you're moving around on a barge of oil, right? This is astronomical. So it's an astronomical problem for the world, really.
Yeah. And Shelley says no trade means no economy for any country. Yeah. There's a lot of like interdependence, right? Like, and we've gotten to a point in a global economy where like, hey, sometimes you realize like it's good to ship stuff around the world. You can get it cheaper by just trading with someone and focusing on what you're good at. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the economic term for that. The economic advantage. Is that the term I'm thinking of?
No, I'm not sure.
No, what's up? Oh man.
I'm sorry, I'm going to screw you up because I was reading a different comment and I kind of lost track of what you were saying. So my apologies, Kevin.
No worries. But anyway, like, and so like these Houthi folks who are, again, we said it in the last segment, not great. Like just legitimately just very not good. And I say that because they've unironically like adapted the Bellamy salute, like the Nazi salute as part of the thing. God. Like they have like actual, like they are very, very anti-Semitic. Like they are, they have child soldiers, they have slavery. Like it's pretty bad, right? Like again, in that in and of itself, that isn't reason to like be involved in a conflict. There are lots of bad people all over the place that like, okay, like we don't need to get involved in this. And I think you and I have both been critical of like when the U.S. administrations got involved in the civil war in the past, right? But that was like more contained to Yemen as a proxy war for Saudi Arabia and Iran. We didn't need to be involved in that. Shouldn't have gotten involved in anyway. But again, now also the justification for some of this stuff is like, the Houthis are like, well, these ships are supplying Israel, but like they're not. Like occasionally they're like, well, but the owner's Jewish of these ships. Like, oh, okay, so we're gonna just we're gonna go there, huh? I mean, not surprising from the Houthis. It's a little bit weird when like the pro-Palestinian folks on the left start justifying it that way. That's an alarming development.
We're in an emotional like maelstrom, right? Like where people
Yeah.
want to pick a side on every freaking issue that comes along. They
You don't
don't
have to pick a
recognize the
side.
conundrum.
Neither side's good in this. Like, I mean, like,
Yeah,
like in the civil war in Yemen, that there's not good sides.
right. The
We don't have to be involved.
government. You've got this. Then you've got an Islamo-fascist counter theocracy fighting for power.
Yeah.
It's just, and our Navy there. And again, guys, I'm going to sound like kind of pro-military. Our Navy there doing its best to ensure trade routes remain open. It's
Right.
actually.
You think that's an okay use of like U.S. military powers? That's
Yes. Yep. In a way, I do. Yeah. I would like it to be more shared responsibility where it doesn't seek to return oppression and where it doesn't drain our resources, where we have clowns like Nikki Haley saying, hey, supporting Ukraine is only 5% of our Pentagon's budget or something. Like, look, using numbers like that, like literally meaningless and just like advocating for war on like without negotiation. One of the things that Kevin and I see out there is that the Houthis are upset about Israel invading Gaza. And so just because I feel like not so much that Israel shouldn't invade Gaza, but that we seem to be lacking a moral tether, some sort of strength to. I'm uncomfortable with what I'm seeing as I understand what's happening in Israel and Gaza. Like I'm uncomfortable with that. I think that the response is not measured. I think that I understand that there's even a conundrum there, if you will, but aggression begets aggression, and like violence begets violence, and blowback is real. You know what I mean? Like this is all stuff that we've got to try to include in this conversation, as difficult as it is. Like I'm saying, hey, the Navy's doing a great job. I agree with keeping trade lanes and routes open. I agree with that. Now, do I agree with the Houthis in the sense that no, like I got to be careful here, right? I don't want to freak people right out, but like I'm uncomfortable with what I'm seeing Israel's response to Gaza is right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, like to me, it's almost like a lot of this stuff is Iran just trying to project power and destabilize the region because they feel it could be they could benefit them. Plus, dragging the United States into it, they think that gives them moral credibility among the audiences that they're trying to build rapport with. So like that's the whole like game that's being played.
Bring back the Shah. Iran needs to bring back the Shah.
Bring back the Shah. You're going back there. See, I mean that's U.S. interventionism. It's
absolutely was, and we got rid of him because he was going to nationalize like BP and their oil fields in Iran. So that's the consequence.
Yeah, I mean, as one of those things, the U.S. got involved in that. It seems as one of those conspiracies that seems like it's probably true.
Well, it's plausible.
Yeah, it was pretty plausible. And there's a bunch of resentment for that, right? So like blowback's a real thing. I try to be a bit more measured in my blowback discussions in the sense that like the Houthis and also like the folks of Hamas and things like that, they have their own agency too. I'd use the phrase during the break, like F around and find out. Like they know that what they're doing is going to provoke a reaction, right? Like they know that there's going to be consequences to it. And as this Facebook user says, Houthis are the ones who attacked our ships first. We're protecting our ships by going after weapons. And I know folks that like will come back with, well, but the American government was bombing them, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know. But like that wasn't happening for a while. What had happened for a little while is like the Obama administration and the Trump administration, they were bombing Yemen and assisting Saudi Arabia in doing so. And then it kind of stopped. And Joe Biden got a lot of flack for like recognizing, okay, Houthis were just going to recognize you as a legitimate party, so you can get aid to help all the starvation that was going on in Yemen, and then try to negotiate you to end this war and end the mass starvation that's existing in Yemen.
Right.
And what ended up happening is they just used that, both the resources and the peace, to regroup and use their new position to attack, trading ships and the U.S. military, unfortunately. And so that's tough, again, like for all the criticism I give Joe Biden, I think like he did try to push like his State Department to like move towards peace and saving lives in that region, and it just kind of blew up a little bit.
Sure, it's that neocon argument that peace through strength and killing people protects us from Islamofascism and Islamoterrorism, and it's like arguably there's points to be made there. They're reprehensible, and if we could end, so this is the problem, Kevin. How do we end these cycles of violence that, on some level, the Houthis were made mentally ready to become Islamo-terrorists and Islamo-fascists by our earlier support of Saudi Arabia and bombing Yemen into starvation. It's just like, so how the heck do we fix that?
Yeah.
And that's a real conundrum. Like, that's a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's not an easy thing to solve, because some of it, like, there's built-in resentment from that. There's also like, again, there's also like, how do you deal with the immediate issue of, here are these people who want to cause chaos and destruction? Is the first thing you need to do, like, you try to make peace with them, or do you remove their ability to cause destruction? And again, this is what that Facebook user is referencing. We're protecting our ships by going after their weapons. Okay, is that a legitimate means of self-defense too? Again, if we're talking about like the U.S. getting involved in a war, like, well, A, do we need to remove their ability to attack? B, is that considered self-defense? Justin Amash, who I have a ton of respect for, made the argument that no, it's not. Like, it is legitimate U.S. self-defense to shoot down like the drones and the missiles and things going after U.S. Navy ships, but it's different and requires a declaration of war to go and bomb a target in Yemen. Totally different thing. And then, yeah, like, where are we now in terms of that stuff? Like, are we at war? Do we need a declaration of war? Is this a legitimate use of self-defense? And then after all that's done, let's say we do remove their ability to do that. Are you able to affect a culture change to get them to want to stop doing that? Right.
Yeah,
so
we
something that
a capitalism and democracy at the point of a gun, and we have to end religious theocracies. Like,
well, so, like, I heard a good discussion on this the other day. You know why people think it worked is because it sort of worked in Germany after World War II.
And Japan, right? They're our buddies now.
Yeah.
We kicked their
they're our buddies now.
Their butts, and now they're our buddies. Great.
Yeah. So that's what people think. And people think about like that, like, oh, like, well, we made it work in Germany. Well, the weird thing about the German one too is if you look up like West German politics, they were they a lot of Nazis got to live and then also kind of keep some like shady stuff going in West Germany and in East Germany. The Soviets did it way worse in East Germany, but there's a lot of sketchy stuff going on in West Germany for the first couple decades after.
I think we may have hired a few German scientists.
Oh, Operation Paperclip. Look it up.
Yeah, I mean,
Operation Paperclip is a real thing.
This is not a conspiracy theory. Like, they had very successful lives after serving.
Werner Braun, look him up.
Yeah,
but that was part of it. It's just like, okay, like you after decades, you sort of let that culture like fully go away, but it didn't go away right away. And so we thought it would be quick. We thought it would happen like that way in Afghanistan and Iraq, and another place, and it just did not work the same. And in Japan, like they kept their emperor, right? And like they kept a lot of the same structure. It was just okay, but yeah, also now you can't go around like invading people anymore, and you're going to be demilitarized, and like that's just going to be a thing.
And they took their competitive edge and they channeled it into into trade, right? Like, isn't the solution?
It took a while though. It took a while.
Okay, yeah, but we helped them build factories. They started making stuff. Now they build their own factories.
Right.
They have an allegiance to nuclear power, so that, like, I mean, their market imploded, their stock market, but I'm not sure ours isn't going to. So, well, that maybe is a
It's
discussion for a
a
different
little bit
day.
more robust, but so it's gonna take a while to collapse. But yeah, there's the whole like, okay, well, is it because of the Marshall Plan? Is it because like we kind of just let a bunch of stuff slide? Like what is it that made that work? And like, can American cultural hegemony win and win over the Houthis eventually? Like, ah,
Culturally, their religion is based in anti-Americanism
yeah,
and anything that we call freedom.
yeah. I mean,
They
like again, they yeah,
so
they brutally prevent American like the benefits of American culture from like going there. Again, American culture is not perfect, but there's a bunch of good things about the United States.
yeah.
And these folks are committed to illiberalism in the worst way possible.
Again,
Um,
look, I want to expand on something you just said there. Like the American culture is actually very strong. It's very real. But we are caught up at least currently in this over emotional society where it's like everybody has to pick a side in something, and then everybody has to be emotional about their side, where to the point of where they're demonizing their neighbor and empowering central planning. And that is where we may lose the plot, if you will. Like that's
yep,
where the real problem is. It's like, yes, diversity is good, but when we're creating using identity politics to empower politicians, that's where America is going to fall apart. Like we're going to destroy ourselves because we've decided to hate our neighbors over things that our neighbors are not responsible for, that are handed to us by the government. That's
yeah,
where it's going to fall apart. Does that make
yeah. All
sense?
right. It does make sense. On that note, though, we can't discuss further because we have to head to break. Thanks
All
again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're gonna be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
right. So did you see that joke out there? I couldn't.
Yes, I was. I can see you like laughing when it came through.
I
Our classic
wanted to
line
work
on
it into
YouTube
a
says
sentence, but I just couldn't.
Houthis and the blowfish.
Yeah,
I think said Houthis a couple times, and I was thinking it too.
yeah, I so wanted to work it right in, and but I couldn't quite get there. So it was good, but it was really funny. It kind of almost distracted me, but I
Yeah,
managed to keep it together. Well played. That's all I gotta
yeah.
say.
And we'll get to a couple more of these comments. Shelly said, "I heard that pro-Palestinian group tried to breach the White House. Is anyone else hearing this?" Yeah, no, there's a pretty rowdy protest that
Yeah,
happened. I think it was over the weekend. They like kind of busted down the gates, and then the riot police like kind of removed
it
them.
was an insurrection, Kevin, by
Yeah, it's
pro-Palestinian. A pro-Palestinian group
insurrection. There you
insurrected the
go.
White House. And look, I'm going to go with Jamal Bowman is still a bigger insurrectionist than the pro-Palestinian group and the January Sixers put together. Pulling that fire alarm was a real act of insurrection. Those people are our servants, and that's a reality. Now, again, I'll add my qualifications, right? Protest is a First Amendment guarantee. Okay, we have the right to petition our government for redress. We have no obligation to be right about that. We do have an obligation to not commit violence. So there were
Yeah.
mistakes made. People want to call parts of it a riot. Fine. I don't care. All right. But to call it an insurrection is absurd. It's absurd. And it's power mad. It's power
I want to rehash that issue. I want to read some comments, so I'll let that statement just linger out there for folks to dwell on.
to chew on. Yeah.
Yeah, another comment from Shelley. Trade shouldn't be a political statement. We were a free trade nation at the beginning, and we should remain free.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. Yeah, it's we should allow free trade. It's just a matter of like, what resources are we willing to commit to enforcing it? And I think like there is a legitimate discussion we had. We sort of glossed over it in the main show, but the US actually doesn't all that benefit like all that directly from Suez Canal trade. Like most of that is like trade between Europe and Asia, right? We
Sure.
don't we do like benefit like in terms of like global markets for goods,
Yes.
but we don't benefit directly. There probably should be more resources put into it by the Europeans. The
Yeah.
the Americans are kind of hesitant to be like, we're gonna get out of this game because then they think China will step into it, and that could be worse.
Well, the
So
entire world benefits from our military presence, enhancing trade. Um,
yeah,
as a reward, Kevin, we do have most of the world vested in our currency. That is a huge benefit. It allows them to devalue that currency on a global scale, so people don't realize that the United States is single-handedly stealing from old people with its inflation and devaluation. But um, anyways, like as an aside, on some level, there is a net benefit to it.
yeah, and there is some net benefit to it. Again, I sort of get it. I get also why, like, maybe having China be the one to take on that role could have some other consequences that aren't good. But also maybe again,
Well,
the UK, France, others should step up a little bit. But UK is a bit involved in that area,
yeah,
but
well,
like,
China would charge a tax, right? If they were maintaining the trade routes through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, they would charge a tax.
right,
We basically do it for next to nothing, right? Like we're
well,
there to maintain a military presence and ensure free trade.
yeah,
We're not net benefits, we're net payer of that. And like
yeah,
I said, the
for
counterbalance
better
is
or worse.
that they use our currency and they trade with us a lot. So, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. So there's some dispersed benefits. Is that worth the trade off? I don't know. But maybe.
it's hard. It's right. There's no way to put dollars and cents to it. We just have to kind of say it seems to be working.
Yeah. And Trisha on YouTube says, "Why pay to send our meat to other countries to cut and pack, and then they send it back? Just do it here. Things are crazy. Price already. We use immigrant labor in warehouses, factories anyway." Tim, you ever see that meme where like it shows like pears grown in Argentina, like packed in Thailand, and then like sold in the USA, like
It
that?
certainly sounds familiar. I am
Yeah,
familiar with
it's like
the
one of those
meat,
things.
the USDA, the agriculture issues that we have going on in this country, where we limit our farmers' access to their local grocery store because they don't go through a federal slaughterhouse, and as such, our meat gets shipped in maybe through the Suez Canal, for all I know, to the United States through a federally inspected um, processing plant.
Yeah,
And so it's like, I don't know. Then they buy it, they brand it, they resell it. It's a wild system
yeah,
that is designed to limit our own local farmers' access to our local grocery stores.
yeah, maybe. And then again, in terms of like the weird situations where we grow stuff here and ship it out overseas and send it back. Like a lot of times they do that in part to like because it's cheaper. Like
Right.
that's like it doesn't seem like it would be cheaper, but it is. So that's why they do it. Like companies aren't going to just do this, for no reason. That's
Yeah. The
they,
U.S.
they
could,
companies do stuff for money. That's what they're doing.
sure. And look, the U.S. has a high tax rate. And
Yeah,
so there's high taxation, there's high regulation. Like it or not, those things cost money. They cost us a lot of money and they cost us a lot of business. So people can make of that what they will. I'm certainly an advocate for better access for local farmers. I want local farmers growing their herd. But we're at a stage where if a local farmer grows his herd, some freak show is going to sue him for making more cow poop. Like it's just we're kind
yeah,
of there. You know what I mean? It's just like it's bizarre, and I don't know.
yeah,
Obviously, it drives me crazy. That's why we do the show. This is my therapy.
absolutely. Um, John, thanks for listening to the live show today. Appreciate you being
Yeah.
here. John on Facebook. He looked up and posted the synopsis of what Operation Paperclip was. I'll read it. Operation
Yep.
Paperclip was a secret United States intelligence program in which more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians were taken from former Nazi Germany to the U.S. for government employment after the end of World War II in Europe between 1945 and 1959.
Yeah.
Yep. No.
True story.
True story, yeah. That's a whole bunch of Nazi scientists, again, including like a good chunk of the NASA program.
Big time. Yeah, they were
I
awesome.
mean, they had rocket experts. That's that's what it was. And I know like lefties like to point this out. The Soviets also did the exact same thing. Like
Sure,
exact same thing. Like
sure.
they took all them, like they executed some political people, then everyone else, like, oh, like the German secret police, they just turned it to the Stasi. That's all it was. Like they literally just like changed uniforms and flags. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the government has to have its agents, right? I mean,
They don't. But
doesn't?
like the Soviets certainly felt that way.
Sure. And that's a reality of our again of our society, right? There's power structures that will stop at nothing to protect the system and their power. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's a reality that we see every day.
Yeah. But on that note, we probably should get back to the final segment of our radio show.
All right.
So we're gonna head back to that in about 10 seconds, and we'll talk about national politics stuff. We'll talk about the caucuses.
Yeah,
Your,
why not?
your guy Vivek. So we're gonna go back in 3, 2. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Willis today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Baron O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and there is big news out of Iowa. In the first ever Libertarian Iowa caucus, Chase Oliver won the day. That obviously probably not going to appeal to a lot of the WYSL audience. So
hey, no, we got libertarians in the WYSL audience. There's a bunch of folks out there. I know you. I know you're out there, folks. But yes, the big news coming out of Iowa this week is the Libertarian caucuses, and Chase Oliver, who is, I don't know, I like Chase. He's actually probably one of my favorite candidates from the Libertarian Party. I know we've had
yeah, I don't dislike him. I really don't.
Yeah.
Like I think we have a lot of interesting people. You know, you and I disagree on two of the people that I find most interesting, but Chase is definitely he did very well.
He got like 40%. Like so
he did a good job in the Senate race, like against two. I mean, he didn't do as well as he should have because people are not awake. We had Herschel Walker and Ralph Warnock as the Senate candidates in Georgia. And like, if people were awake, like, honestly, Chase Oliver should have got 10-20% of the vote out of that deal. You know what I mean? Because like the GOP and the DNC said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put up the two worst candidates for Senate in Georgia to practice for a presidential run in 2024 and to replay 2020. And so, anyways, Chase is great. I hope he does well.
Yep. So yeah, no, and so he's putting in the work. He's going around every state trying to win libertarian support, trying to build a legitimate case for libertarian president, and that's with the challenges this year with the Libertarian Party getting on the ballot in every state, with New York being difficult, and several other states being even more difficult in some cases to get on the ballot. He's making his case to provide an alternative, as are others in the Libertarian Party as well. Sure. Like Michael Rectenwald ended up getting second, down at 17%. Mike
Termott, who was on our show, he's running.
He's running.
Mike Termott.
Mike Termott. Yeah, he got just under 14%. So did Josh Smith. Vivek, that guy, Vivek Ramaswamy, 4.65%.
In the Libertarian caucus?
In the Libertarian caucus.
All right.
He actually beat out Lars and Jacob Hornsberger, which is kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob runs regularly. He's a powerful speaker.
He almost got it last time. Like he made a good run at it.
Yeah. He's interesting to me. He's a libertarian purist. He's aggressive in his messaging, which all of those things I like. So he's been great for the party. I'm not sure if this year is going to be his year, but okay,
Yeah. But yeah, he's always there. So he was up there in the final tier candidates with Joe Jorgensen last time.
He'll probably make it there again this year, just out of respect for all of the effort that he puts in. I wouldn't be surprised anyway. You know, he's got a lot of appealing messaging, and the way that he talks, he's very authoritarianly libertarian, and people I think like that. He's willing to take it to the man. He says what he says boldly and proudly and aggressively.
Yeah. No, that's very true. Which again, a lot of people love. Some people in the party, it wasn't really their thing.
Yeah, the people that ran Bill Weld. So, like, what do you want from me?
No, right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because last time around, I was like, it was weird. Like Joe Jorgensen was kind of a strange candidate in that, like, she was sort of like everyone's second choice. I think, like, and again, like she was fine, like, but I think that's kind of everyone was like, well, I really want this person, but like, if not this person, then Joe's fine, right? Like, I can live with Joe.
Yeah,
and that's kind of how it ended up like shaking out at the weird 2020 national convention.
The ultimate compromise candidate, everyone's second choice. And look, honestly, like, she's very likable, and she's very much a libertarian purist, and I like that about her. I think that she's not a born campaigner. Spike, on the other hand, is a born campaigner, though he recognizes that the feasibility of him being president is not where his efforts should be directed.
He's mostly focusing on activism for now. He's doing his oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the name of his group. You Are the Power. He's doing that stuff. And drawing attention to police abuse cases and things like that. And he was running as a candidate with all people of Vermin Supreme. He was Vermin Supreme's running mate, if you remember.
Yeah,
there was this whole thing, like he had a whole like joke candidate thing going, and then for whatever reason he got chosen to be the VP candidate, and then like kind of shifted into like kind of activist mode. Instead of running like a fun joke campaign.
Right. So look, I threw a curveball at you because you were not expecting me to come out with this libertarian caucus.
I just rolled with it. I know how it is. Tim, you just throw stuff out, and I'm like, okay, man, this is like improv. I just yes and like that's
yeah, man. It's an absolute talent that you have. But we were in fact going to talk about this Republican event. Apparently, I do the Democrats, are they going to even caucus in Iowa? Like, they just basically have already.
I mean, they're basically they're just going with Biden. Like,
so the big surprise, Kevin, is that Vivek did not win Iowa. That's the big surprise.
He didn't do great.
He did not. I like a lot of what he has to say. He's a great speaker, and he does it. Look, Kevin, you know that I hate the mainstream media, and I don't think that, and I know that a lot of people really hate the mainstream media, but I'm pretty sure they don't hate them enough. Vivek does a nice job of exposing them for what they are, the Operation Mockingbird, the CIA is the fourth estate kind of thing. And so,
can I compliment Vivek for a second? So I generally don't like him for a bunch of reasons, but I'll say he did an interview. I think it was with was it with the New York Post? Who's the one who they were asking him about like white supremacy?
I caught her Twitter feed about that, and I cannot remember her name because her name is worthless. Her name should be burned from the world's memory.
Oh man, now I'm like, I can't remember the name of the organization that interviewed him, but like this woman interviewing him was just like absolutely like losing it. Like, it was the most unprofessional interview like from like a major media outlet that I've seen in a long time. And Vivek, to his credit, kept his cool, stuck to his message, and just like, no, man, like it's not about that. Like, it's not. We're not in a country that's divided in a way that you say it's divided. And he gave like a relatively positive like message, and like that's the type of thing I like hearing from that guy.
Yeah,
And like I said, he was an interesting dude. He went on like a bunch of libertarian podcasts, like the Fifth
he sure
Column,
did.
and kind of made his case, like not always effectively, but like he made his case. I thought he was an interesting guy. Well, he
Yeah,
still is an interesting guy. It is weird because like Donald Trump came out and like started trashing him,
yeah.
and he Vivek's response to that was like, well, I still like Trump, and like I think in order to save Trump, I need to be president. And then Trump's
Interesting
still
point.
bashing him, and then he went and endorsed Trump anyway. I don't know,
Yeah.
like it's just a I don't know, it's a weird thing that a bunch of Republicans do. Like Donald Trump is like the meanest jerk to like so many people in the party, and then people still kind of grovel at his feet. I don't get it, but
Oh, but Donald Trump was actually, for Donald Trump, very gracious in his victory in Iowa. And I want to be clear, like Donald Trump won Iowa by with I think if I recall correctly, which I don't, but I heard somewhere that this is the largest margin of victory that a Republican presidential candidate has ever gotten in the Iowa caucuses.
yeah, so 51%, and it's for non-incumbents, right? Which like
Okay.
Donald Trump is not exactly an incumbent, so
Mm, yeah, that makes sense. He's not exactly a non-incumbent either, but I get
yeah,
it. You
right.
know
Like
what I mean?
yeah, it's like kind of in a weird in between spot. Like he's not incumbent like by the definition of the word, but also is was kind of coming into this as the presumed nominee as someone who was only in office one term.
Sure. Presumed nominee, most likely nominee, unless they manage to take him out somehow. Apparently, February 7th is the date for the Supreme Court to hear the Colorado case. And I believe they're going to address the main issue as well, where Donald Trump has been removed from the GOP primary ballots. At the very least, it's going to provide this show with material. Um, I honestly, Kevin, I had this thought the other day where the Supreme Court is going to back the decision in Colorado, and or just say that that's not an issue that we can rule on. It's a states' rights issue, and we neither agree nor disagree nor endorse, the typical legalese that they may use, where Donald Trump ends up remaining off the primary ballot in Colorado. Uh,
Yeah.
Ultimately, as a constructionalist, I think that would be the correct ruling. I do think that using civil law to take a preponderance of evidence to call Donald Trump a leader of an insurrection is problematic, at the very least, problematic. So that
Yeah.
you
And
only
again, I told you, like the definition of like insurrection and like what that whole thing was aside, I do think it was a problem to remove Donald Trump from the ballot. I don't agree with that. I think that causes more problems than it solves if that is your goal. I mean,
his popularity goes up after stuff like that, which
yeah,
is
right. Like,
honestly
yeah,
something.
like again, like the left keeps doing this stuff. Like like what's gonna happen. Like, how many times do you have to turn him into a victim, despite like not deserving it at all?
All right, so like the mainstream media is like a fish on the shore that can't get back to the ocean. They're like flopping around, taking their last breath as they dehydrate. And like, look, their last breath, they look at Donald Trump and they're like, "Man, we made money when he was around. Like there, we did." And it's just like, so they say the craziest things, they're doing the craziest things, and I'm a part of me is reasonably sure that they want him as bad as the MAGA people want him. He,
Could be just because like it's better ratings. People are glued to your TV. What is this guy gonna say next? How is this guy gonna endanger democracy next?
hey, and wait for my commentary on how he did just endanger democracy by crossing the street in downtown New York City. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like the
Which again, they did so much of that during the Trump administration and the lead up to it, and they're gonna do it this year too, that you lose out on the actual terrifying stuff because there is actual horrible stuff that Donald Trump has done, is doing, will be doing that does erode our Constitution, and that kind of gets lost if it gets mentioned at all.
well, our Constitution, we've been ruling by executive fiat, right, on some level, and we have like an executive budget officer that writes the budgets and then hands it out. So it's not just Donald Trump that's been eroding our concept of a Republican democracy, a democracy-based republic. Like, it's not just Donald Trump; it's people wanting populist authoritarianism to fix problems because they hate their neighbor, but they don't even hate their neighbor. They've just been convinced that they hate their neighbor. Like, I know I'm traveling in circles on that issue a little bit, but that's what feels right to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, yeah, generally, yeah, 100%. You know, people end up getting artificially divided by this stuff. I don't know. I don't know what to do with that, but
I made some post that I'm trying to find it right now about Donald
yeah,
Trump and the fact that he's a threat to democracy. So if he's a threat to democracy, he can go in and take over the system. Like, is our system actually the problem? If Donald Trump can take over the system and end democracy, do we really have a
right.
democracy? I know it's supposed to be a republic, but then I have another question. If Donald Trump can use the system to end democracy, isn't the real problem the system? Doesn't the system have too
Yeah.
much power? Like, that felt right to me, that question.
Right. So on that note, though, I'm looking at the time. We do
Oh,
have to end the show. We can keep this discussion going though after the show, but we have to say goodnight to our WYSL audience. We're over for a free solution. Have a great night, folks. Take care. All right. Yeah. But Tim, in terms of that tweet, because I saw that tweet about that, like whether or not our system was resilient enough for that, like, because I have two thoughts. Like, so one, like, yeah, you're partially right in the sense that, like, we do have a resilient system. We do have a system where, like, if it's susceptible to an individual coming in power and abusing that, then that power should be taken away so that, like, the government cannot you know unconstitutionally and immorally, like, remove our rights, things like free
sure.
speech, the right to bear arms, things like that. But also, like, I don't think that that's an excuse not to be vigilant, and that's like the whole libertarian mission anyway, right? Like, we,
Sure.
we can't just say, like, well, the system survived Trump's, therefore it can survive anything. Well, no, like, a constant assault is eventually going to break things down, and it's been under assault from, Donald Trump and Joe Biden and maybe Donald Trump again, and, like,
Yeah.
in addition to all the other presidents who've, like, worn down stuff. I think either Shelley or you know maybe it was I don't remember if Shelley or Patricia who had made a comment about executive orders being oh, it was Shelley. Uh, executive orders becoming an
Well, that's
insurrection.
actually that's genius, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that comment.
But like, so that's like we've been under assault for that in a while. Like, my whole take on, like, Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, which I'm dreading, is that Joe Biden is like the polite society authoritarian. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. Like, he overextends executive power and tries to get around Congress and stretches the laws, but he's doing it in the nice, polite, like, legalese way, right? We saw
Mhm.
that with things like the student loan forgiveness, with changing different types of, like, workplace rules, and it's just like all sorts of stuff like that, right?
Sure.
And then Donald Trump does it in the sloppy, not even going to pretend it's legal way that gets, like, slapped down. And so, like, which is worse? Like, the one that gets slapped down, like, pretty easily, but maybe a couple things make it through, or the
Yeah.
one where it's gonna have to spend months to years being actual law before it gets through the court system, defended by government lawyers with some, you know, semi-plausible argument for defense of this increase in executive power. Like, which one's better or worse, right?
Oh,
Is it
I think that the one where it's sloppy authoritarianism, where it immediately gets struck down, is actually better for for taking some of the power back. certainly there would be chaos, and certainly people would be angry if Donald Trump's executive orders constantly got overturned, as we witnessed.
Yeah.
But
And the fear is like if he gets enough of his own people in, like what happens when like no one else is there to say no to him, right? Like that's the worry.
Yeah, I think my point wasn't, and I'm sure you get this. My point was not in support of Donald Trump. It was in to point out a flaw in the perception of our system. Like if our system can be co-opted by Donald Trump or Joe Biden, didn't we allow the executive branch to become too powerful? Like, isn't that the real issue? If they can just like they have no accountability to Congress for their military actions as long as they designate it's a terrorist organization or it's in self-defense. They have no accountability for that. They don't have to bring their war plans to Congress, and no matter what, that is a violation of the Constitution, and that is a violation of the supposedly balance of power, where the legislative branch is supposed to have a say in what we're doing. Is that?
Yeah. In theory, that's what's supposed to happen. And we've moved so far from that. Congress is so dysfunctional that, like, I mean, again, it goes back to it, folks. If you haven't read Road to Serfdom, like it's kind of like how that works out, right? Is that government keeps promising that's going to solve problems. It finds itself incapable of solving problems. And as the complexity increases, the legislative bodies where the deliberation is supposed to take place, they find it difficult to be able to solve these things effectively because they can't solve them because it's too centralized of an authority to do that. And so you end up, and this happened very slowly. In the example he uses in Road to Serfdom is it presumes like a bit of a quicker thing, but in the US it's like, well, we can't expect Congress to debate all of like the EPA like environmental regulations or the FAA environmental regulations. They cannot possibly know all this stuff. So we'll just issue it through regulatory updates in these agencies or through executive orders. We've got to get this through quicker because we need rules for our society. And over decades, Congress has ceded all of its power to the executive branch. And like it's the Road to Serfdom in slow motion. Tim, would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and I think that that's a real problem, especially when I see what these high-paid servants who are supposed to be serving us. They're literally their job is to serve us, and they come up with arguments in the identity politics realm that they try to legislate to maintain the division and their own personal power. Like, to me, that's a flaw in the system. And look, the irony of a document that was created to limit the scope and scale and the power of government to intrude in people's lives, creating the largest government the world has ever seen. There's a certain amount of irony there,
Yeah.
And so I didn't read The Road to Serfdom, but I feel as though I'm well versed in the issues.
No, you should. It's worth a read, and one of the big things it talks about is how the erosion of economic freedom inevitably leads to the erosion of political freedom as well.
So I've lived it. I haven't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I've seen my
exactly.
Like. And look, better living through oligarchy is a thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Steve Becker says better living through oligarchy. Yeah.
I want a disinterested tyrant right now. Really, like Donald Trump is far too interested of a tyrant for my liking.
Oh man, you're gonna join the monarchists now?
No, probably not. I'll probably go more towards anarchy. Like where I just like. I'm going to grow my own food and I'm going to like barter for goods, things like that.
Tim, you don't, I mean, you could do that. You can grow your own food. I'm just saying like, you could still for folks who are like, I don't want to grow my own food. Can I
No.
be an anarchist then? You don't need to. You just need to provide value and then trade that value with other folks, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just the economy, but without the government, involved in that. That's that's the whole thing.
Yeah. All right. So what about this question? How do you two
um,
define democracy?
yeah, so that's where I was gonna go with next. How would I
Okay.
define democracy? I let's see. So when I talk about democracy, I do like that Winston Churchill quote, which is that democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. Uh, I don't. It is like simply the rule by majority, right? Whatever level that you want to define that at. You can have democratic republics where you elect representatives to make decisions on your behalf because you can't possibly like give up your day-to-day life to have decisions to make decisions all the time.
Sure.
um or you could you have things like referendums where the people directly vote on legislation, right? We do that in New York State with a handful of things. They do it a lot in California.
Hmm.
um I don't always think that I as an individual should be subject to the will of the majority, though. And that's why I say, like, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. Other forms of government are worse. That having a will of the majority is better than one person who's a jerk or a handful of people who are jerks and
Yeah.
who also do not care at all what I think or what I do or how my family thrives.
Yeah. So I define democracy, and I think it's not dissimilar from what you said, but where 50.1% of the population, 50.001% of the
50% plus
population,
one. Yeah.
yeah, can dictate the rights and responsibilities of 100% of the population. I think that it's I think that democracy without some sort of constitution actually restraining it is one of the most dangerous forms of government. Like I don't believe in pure democracy. I think it's dangerous. Like we cannot have without a recognition of natural rights. Democracy is looting of the treasury. Democracy is identity politics, and democracy is dangerous. Like without a recognition of individual rights and liberties, democracy is a mess. Now,
Yeah.
so a constitutional republic seemed like a pretty good idea at the time, but on some point, at some point, I think we have to admit that the Constitution has been, at the very least, unsuccessful in limiting the scope and scale of the government.
Maybe. So yes, and to be clear, we don't have a democracy. We have as you said, we have a constitutional republic, which says that there are certain things that a majority cannot supersede, and that's critical, right? It's
Sure.
critical to say it doesn't matter if 80% of the people want me to shut up, like I still have a right to speak my mind, right?
Sure.
Or, to defend myself, to not be thrown in jail for arbitrary reasons, all that type of stuff, right? Like all that stuff's important, even with unpopular minorities, right? And, apply that whatever way you will. Um, in terms of like, has the Constitution been effective? Uh, I think like yes, like generally it has been effective, just not as effective as we want it to be.
Okay.
Like the alternative being that there are no written down constraints to government, I think we would have ended up a lot worse.
Well, I think we would have imploded. Um,
Yeah.
and so had we imploded, had it all collapsed, our system of federal states collapsed, right? Um, I'm not saying that that would have been better. Who knows? With like a bunch of tribes going to war over a big lake in Michigan or something like that. Like like I could
Literally has happened. And I
right.
think specifically in Michigan, like that, I
Yeah.
think the Yoopers one time like had a secession movement.
So
Um,
I'm just saying I could see it having um not brought in the world to this state of individual rights and liberties that we do in fact have. And again, we bash our government, we probably bash the United States, but I want to recognize the fact that We're doing it from the comfort of our home. We're doing it with a certain sense of security, and so like America on a whole is still good, but could it be better? Could it be freer? And could it deliver uh, like voluntary charity and stuff like that? Could we do a better job with that instead of incentivizing certain problems and like you and I talk about market distortions in the housing market that have actually contributed to homelessness on a scope and scale that I don't think people quite grasp. So, okay, America's great. I know it. I mean it. I live it. But could we do better, Kevin? That's I guess where it comes down to.
Yeah, we could absolutely do better. Again, my point about defending like the Constitution stuff like that isn't that like we could do better. Like, of course we could do better. It's just I think there's still some use to that. I think there's still some use to having like a unified system of government that we had. Although I am going to post a link to there was in fact a battle between Michigan and Ohio over a river in Lake Erie.
I love it. I love it.
Just posted the wiki article about that. And get this one from Patricia too, and maybe we'll answer this question and call the night after that. Patricia on YouTube asks, what do you think those who wrote the Constitution would say about the USA today?
I'll start with that we have allowed a kleptocracy to form inside of our government. That looting the treasury, it has become synonymous with serving the people, and so that's what I think they would say. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I do feel like
there's a lot of that. There's
a lot of theft going on.
A lot of theft going on, and yeah, I mean it's hard to say. Like again, the founding fathers were a complicated bunch who had their own issues, their own factions going on. I'm sure depending on which of the writers of the Constitution you ask, some of them would be like, oh man, I thought we were moving away from the factionalism. I was hoping we'd get away from that. Other folks might be surprised at the growth of government and how it worked out. Someone like Alexander Hamilton would be absolutely thrilled about that. He'd be like, yes, exactly as I hoped. Someone like Thomas Jefferson, not so thrilled. Now,
do you think Alexander Hamilton would be thrilled with the net results, or would he be like, okay, there's areas where we've gone too far and this government is not actually serving the people the way that I envisioned it?
Yeah, I mean, there's I don't know about Hamilton specifically, but like that guy envisioned like a strong central government that helped lead the economy, and like if you looked at where the United States is like materially from like today compared to then, like he would think like, man, we must have done great. We're living in a utopian future compared to where they are now. And again, that's not to say we're doing everything perfect. Someone like Thomas Jefferson, on the other hand, would be like, oh, we messed up. We messed up bad. You look at the scope of everything, after, of course, getting over like the shock of us trying to explain what the internet is and this podcast. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of that. I mean, I did resist the urge to make the internet meme joke of like, what do you think the founding fathers would think of what we're doing today? And is that joke that says you freed the what? Yeah.
What?
So, but I mean, also part of that. So some of them would be very happy with that. Oh, good. I'm glad you finally did that. And like, well, yeah, it took a whole civil war to do. But slavery ended. So it says our representatives don't seem to remember taxation without representation. They would say technically we have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if they don't think about it too much, I mean, like they say, well, Congress, this is like it comes through us, even if it's not directly, it comes through our authority that we have granted to other agencies. And, I think
Right.
folks
The
like
social contract.
Shelley, me, you, Tim, like we'd all say, well, that kind of feels like cheating a bit.
Yeah. It seems like
We, the Congress, give the executive the power to do whatever the heck he or she wants, and all of their bureaucracies to do whatever the heck they want. And we have done our duty as Congress. Time to go fundraise.
Yeah. Here's one. And maybe this will be our last one for tonight. But Tim, we hire them and fire them with our votes. We are supposed to be their bosses. I do think that our servants, our high paid servants in the government, have forgotten that. And I think it's the reason why they have forgotten that is that we don't churn them out fast enough. That we're still looking at 92% reelection rate. We're still looking at lifetime careers being made by people investing in stocks and manipulating legislation to benefit themselves. Like that's where the kleptocracy comes in, where they're literally stealing and manipulating, and they've made it legal. And that's another problem that we won't solve today. But yes, we are their bosses, and they seem to have forgotten about it. And they use events like January 6th to manipulate people's opinion on that. Like they are our servants, and like they're horrible people. A lot of them, they're just absolutely horrible.
Man, you're on the January 6th stuff today, huh?
Well, I guess, yeah, a little bit. I do want to work it in occasionally, but somebody called me uncaring, Kevin, and I want to be honest. Like that was hurtful. Like I don't think that I am uncaring. I think that I'm empathetic, and I think I'm compassionate, and I think that I see where the government lies to people and pretends to care, whereas we're talking about real solutions that would benefit everyone, not just the people who are at the outskirts of society that have been, almost cast aside and then somewhat helped by the government. We're talking about a vibrant economy. We're talking about free exchange between people. We're talking about private charities that fill needs. We're talking about people on the margin being able to afford a place to live because somebody is willing to take a risk on them, and where they can learn valuable lessons about how they're supposed to interact with life, even though that may have been challenging up to this point in their life. So that's what we're talking about. It's not that we don't care, it's that we actually do care, and that the government isn't the best vehicle to care for people.
Oh, I mean, people can't see beyond like some immediate effects and consequences, right? Like like I said, they're not seeing like the bigger picture of like, because we talk about this all the time in terms of like, like eviction protections, right? Again, we see like, okay, yes, like the immediate thing, the thing that you're like, you have tunnel vision on is like, there may be a family who's going to be helped by this, and you don't see all the other second, third, fourth order consequences of what happens when you implement such a policy, and like there's less housing available because of that, right? Like, and that's one of those things. And so like to someone who has that tunnel vision, you look uncaring, but like, to us, we're like zooming out and we're seeing the big picture, and we're saying, oh, yes, like that, this could in theory help this like these handful of families with eviction protection, but what about all the other families, the unseen, who don't get to have a home because you've implemented this thing that reduces the incentives to build more housing and to have more rental properties available, right? Like they don't see that stuff. And that's like I said, that's, we've talked about that a bunch. That's a challenge, right? Like people have that tunnel vision and they can't see like the theoretical, even though like, and we didn't even talk about this show, like the stuff like in Argentina where they deregulated housing and they increased housing supply by 20%, or was it 20 per? I'm getting mixed up. 20% housing, 50% reduction in rate, or am I getting that mixed up?
I think the numbers are mixed up a little bit, but I'm not.
So is it like a 50% increase in housing in some places, 20%
right? But
reduction
I would
in rent?
skeptical of the numbers anyway. So your numbers are close enough as far as I'm concerned. Like I don't know that the numbers could be accurate on this short of a a scale of time, right? Like where they could just say, oh, look, magically he lifted these restrictions and we see a 20% change in this and that. Like, but what we are seeing is an increase in supply. And if I recall correctly, it was a 20% up to a 20% reduction in cost. So
Right.
I don't know that they put a number on the increase in supply, but maybe they did. But I was skeptical of the numbers anyway, but still, I'm sure that there is a drastic positive effect, and that it's very real for the residents of the Buenos Aires.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anyway, though, on that note,
Oh, hang on, wait, we got to do a
wait,
shout
I
out
got one.
to our eye in the sky, our boots on the ground. Patricia gave me a couple articles. One of the ones that I really wanted to cover locally in Plattsburgh, CPS is out making sure 14-year-olds aren't shoveling sidewalks. Like that's a
Oh,
good
really?
thing, right? We can
Oh,
all
goodness.
agree protecting kids from shoveling sidewalks is just exactly what our little government representatives, our petty tyrants, should be doing.
Why? No, the 14-year-old should be getting paid like $20 to go shovel like sidewalks and driveways. Like, not only do I want them like shoveling like sidewalks in their own houses, I want like the child labor aspect. Like, they should go and like get jobs.
Goddamn right, Kevin. That's
Yeah.
why people hate libertarians. You don't
It
care
is.
about children.
I know, it's because the supporting child labor. That's
You sound
no,
like LPNH there for a second.
I know,
don't
right?
know.
No, but you should. That 14-year-olds should be able to go shovel driveways for money and not have CPS
Absolutely.
called on them. Like it's a pretty straightforward thing. Like a lot of them are able-bodied, and like it's gonna take them forever. Like, listen, I mean, some 14-year-olds I'm sure are fine, but like a lot of them are gonna screw around. And it's gonna take forever. But I'm willing to like throw $20 at a 14-year-old if they have the gumption to go and like make a buck in my
You
neighborhood.
heard it here first, Rochester. Kevin Wilson wants kids to shovel his driveway. He wants child labor to mow his lawn.
100%. No, like really, like I've had neighborhood kids like, hey, like I'm raking leaves, like I'm just trying to make a few bucks. Like, can they ask like if I would pay them the right goods. Like, well, I don't need leaves raked right now, but I need paint scraped. You want to make $40 scraping paint?
That's awesome.
Yeah, cool, man. Whatever. Like,
in my phone, I have a kid that walked by my house and he's like, hey, do you want me to rake your leaves for you? And I'm like, no, but I want your phone number. And he gave it to me. So I always forget about it when I have little jobs to do, but I got to call that kid and see if he'll come by and shovel my driveway this right now, because I ain't got time. It would be awesome.
No, I mean, that's, and then this Facebook user says, I was tossing hay bales and wagons when I was 12.
Me too,
Yeah, man. When I was, I was 12, 13. I was mowing lawns in my neighborhood. And actually, when I was 14, we were clearing land to build a house. So that was, yeah, I mean, like, it was like, my grandpa chopping down trees and then like cutting them up into logs and then loading the logs onto like the trailer behind the John Deere like lawnmower, driving them up the street so then we could go and split them at my grandparents' house later. So that was
burn them for heat. Oh my god.
Yeah, no, my grandparents still use a wood fire. Like they have a furnace, but like most of their heating in the winter comes from a wood fireplace just because my grandpa likes it. That's what it is. So he splits logs every year, or he buys like scrap wood, and but that year, like we had logs from clearing that property for years afterwards.
That's fantastic.
Which is fine. It was a lot of like, again, like as a 14-year-old, I was building muscle, like again, chucking those logs in the thing, which was great, except for we weren't paying attention to the poison ivy on stuff, and that was bad. That was not good.
Yeah, I got poison ivy working for a college professor. Like at a summer gig, he's just like, hey, you want to help me at my house? And I'm like, sure. So I'm like pulling weeds and stuff like that. And then I end up with this massive breakout of poison ivy. And he's like, calls me up, where you been? I'm like, well, I actually had to go to the hospital because I got poison ivy. And he was nice about it. He tried to help me out a little bit. He was a good guy. He was my blind economics professor, Professor Lovejoy, who was one of those guys that actually refused to actually be blind. Like he did not accept his limitations. And unfortunately, I guess, like he was living his best life. So I don't know if we want to put it like unfortunately, but he died in a skiing accident. Like he was a downhill
Wow.
skier. Yeah. Yeah. So
Wow.
he was
Yeah.
living his best life. He was a good dude. He really was.
Yeah. So there's a couple more comments and we're gonna go for real. Shelly says we shovel our neighbor's drivers for free. We each had a shovel that was our size. Yeah, I mean that's something you do too. That's nice. But again, I don't begrudge any like teenager who wants to make a buck shoveling driveway too. It's
Yeah.
sometimes it's a thing that needs to be done. And Steve says I was pulling barges down the Erie Canal. So Steve, he actually used to go by Sal. That song's actually about him.
Wait a minute. Wait a second. I don't know if I buy that. I mean, Steve definitely could, for sure.
Yeah, he has the capacity for sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Steve, we're gonna need some photographic evidence of you pulling barges down the Erie Canal. All right. On that note, though, we're actually gonna get going for real. Thanks for joining us here on A Free Solution. Have a good night.